Well, most importantly, ladies, we're here to talk about us. And we have a range of amazing women with us online today. And we have a range of self-employed entrepreneurs, small business owners, and women who are working both in big and in small corporations. And what's amazing is that all of you online today represent a rise of females changing the landscape of business and the world today. In fact, women-owned businesses are growing 5 times faster than the national average. And internationally, women make up almost 1/3 of all the entrepreneurs worldwide. And in the US, women now make up over 51% of the labor force today. However, we should still take the time to acknowledge the opportunities that are still ahead of us and that face us today. We still need progress of women represented in managerial positions. We still need representation of women in color in the workforce. And there's talk of a potential impending, if it's not here already, she-cession, where some women, especially entrepreneurs, are being forced to step away from their careers due to COVID. But I don't share that with you to upset you or to bring the house down, but really acknowledging these challenges are important because we need to take note of what we have to bond together to achieve and accomplish and overcome. And I want to leave you with some facts and figures that we should really be proud about in terms of the progress that we have made in the past 2 years. According to the McKinsey Women Workplace Study, we've actually seen in the past 2 years an increase of women in the C-suite. We've also seen more commitments by companies to gender diversity, and we've seen more sponsorship of women in corporations today. So what's really important here is to recognize this work and recognize how far we have come, because there's so much more we can do together. So let's celebrate the progress that we have made with a little Marca Prosecco, of course. And joined with me here today is a community of women who have timeless stories, who want to learn from each other, and who are working to support each other. So today we're going to hear from women who will share their best personal and professional tips that are both timely and timeless for us to continue to grow our futures. Let's meet our first panel who will talk to us about personal fulfillment. So first, I'd like to introduce Luvleen Sidhu, who is the co-founder and CEO of BankMobile. Luvleen founded BankMobile at the age of 28. She's one of Crain's New York's Business 2020 class of 40 under 40 honorees, and she's been featured on CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, and Forbes.com. Next, we've also, oh, I love the clap, Elena, thank you. Next, we have Joy Offoru, who is an associate brand marketing manager at Instagram. She is the youngest brand marketer at Facebook. She led Instagram's first on-site sponsorship of a music festival, and she launched a viral digital photo campaign that was reshared by Lupita Nyong'o and Ruth Carter, which is very exciting. Next, I'd like to introduce Miss Anna Bond, who is co-founder and chief creative officer of Rifle Paper Company. Anna started Rifle Paper Company 10 years ago in the garage of her in-laws' apartment. And what's amazing about what she's done with this business is she's grown the business without taking any outside funding whatsoever. She's also designed over 1,000 different products, which includes a USPS postal stamp. And she's the mother to 3 young boys under the age of 5, which sounds very exhausting. So you absolutely deserve the Prosecco today. And then last but not least, I'd love to introduce Elena Kasmarsky. She is a co-founder of the Everygirl Media Group, and she turned a self-funded investment of $6,000 into a 7-figure business today. And in fact, the Everygirl Media Group in 2016 was selected as the publication of choice to feature the women of Michelle Obama's staff, which is very, very exciting. And Elaine started this business even though she went to college to be a magazine editor, and after graduating realized she wanted to pivot towards her passion and started blogging when she couldn't find a job in New York City. So Elena, I know you're going to offer a ton of great advice here today. Yep. So ladies, Welcome. We're so excited to have you here to talk about personal fulfillment, and especially personal fulfillment in the times that we are living in today. So, Elena, I'd actually like to start off with you. And I think what's so fascinating about you is you had a vision to start a new publication, and blogging really was a passion for you. And the reason why that's so interesting, I think, today is we're probably finding that there are a lot of women today who are finding their passion projects during shelter in place at home. And my first question for you is, for those women who are looking to start their own passion project or their own business right now, what advice would you have for them as they explore that avenue during this time?
That is a good question. I think my advice would be at any time, especially now, if it is truly a passion project, by definition, something you care a lot about, something that brings you happiness, something that lifts you up, whether it's now or in a year from now or a year ago, like despite the times, do it. And I think now more than ever, we all need that thing that lifts us up, something to wake up for that you are excited about. And a passion project is exactly that. Like, now will definitely bring hardship, in launching a new company or a new job that, is unique to the times. But that's going to happen all the time when you launch any company. And at the end of the day, it's like, we've had a lot of headaches and hardship. We're in 8 years of business now, but every Monday, it's the job I want to be doing. Like, every job's going to have hardships, but I love this job more than anything else. And it was a passion project, and that's what a passion project is. It's like, what do they say? If you love your job, you never work a day in your life. And I think people need that now more than ever. So if it's something that is going to bring you that inspiration, something to look forward to when you wake up every day, 100%. And, right now, launching something new right now allows you to pivot maybe what that initial idea was with the current times and what's happening in the world. And I promise it won't be the last time you'll have to pivot. It's just going to make you stronger as a business owner or freelancer or whatever that might be, to kind of adapt and see how you can get going with what's going on right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you bring up a great point, like pivoting towards your passion right now. Like, we can also see this time as a time of potential opportunity to invest that and nurture that and take that into a profession that we love. And so I'd actually like to go to Anna next, because Anna, you built a business off of a talent that you had. And it's very, very similar to that. And so how did you know that your personal passion and that your talent for art and illustration, how did you know that would become a business? And how did you nurture that how did you make that bridge from a personal side to the professional side?
I think it started with just trying to find something that clicked for me. I was doing illustration on the side during a job that I had, and was really trying to build it up into something more. So I ended up really I think the first step was really trying to find what my personal aesthetic was and find something that felt really unique to myself. And then I started to realize as I got into stationery that there wasn't really anything like what I was doing in the market. So I saw a hole, and really seeing that gap in the market gave me the confidence to pursue it. And between walking a trade show for stationery and sort of realizing that I had something different, I worked for about 6 months, sort of sustained myself on that confidence, and we built a site and just sort of made the plans to launch an official business from then, and figured everything out as we went. But that's really how it started.
Yeah. And has that changed for you as you moved from the personal side to the professional side? Is that passion still the same? Is it still there? Elena talked about how she wakes up and she gets to do what she absolutely loves. Does that still feel the same for you, Anna? Because I know sometimes women think like, oh, I love this now, but if I turn it into a business, will I still love it?
I think that for sure, I always love it, but it's not to say there aren't hard days or that there's challenging periods where you struggle to go to work, and it's still, that it's your dream and your passion, but it doesn't always mean that it's easy. So I think that there's that reality to it as well. And I think that that's okay. You know, I think that that drive sustains you through those hard times, but it doesn't always mean that it'll be easy or that you like wake up singing every morning, you know, skipping to work. But I do love it. And I think that there's definitely been seasons to the business over 10 years, some easier than others. But yeah, just loving what I do has gotten me through those hard times.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as we think about balancing a personal passion, turning that into a profession while still investing in yourself personally, that's sometimes a fine line that's, or I should say it this way, it's a line that sometimes becomes blended, right, between personal and professional. And Luvleen, I'd actually love to get your perspective on entrepreneurship, because a lot of the entrepreneurs who are probably tuning in with us today probably feel that, like, where do I find that divide between my personal and professional life? And for you, Luvleen, entrepreneurship has been core to who you are and core to what you do, in addition to the many other things that you are. And sometimes entrepreneurship, I'm sure, feels hard, is a very long marathon, both on your professional life and on your personal life. So as we have people here today who are thinking, like, how do I take this passion project that I found in this time and launch it forward? How do we talk about giving them the mental and emotional muscle of resilience to keep going? What advice would you have for them?
That's a great question. And as I'm hearing others speak about passion too, you know, I think that passion is ideal and it's so important to sort of, you know, have that as fuel for what you're doing. But I also want to be careful to not overemphasize it in some degree, where there's going to be times where you might not know your passion. And sometimes people might be like knocking their head at the wall, like, I don't know my passion yet. So I think you guys should give yourself a break. Each experience opens the door for you to evolve, to learn about yourself and what resonates with you. And you will eventually topple upon what resonates with your heart. So number one advice is, like, just work hard where you are, because when you give your 100% where you are, usually another door opens, or you figure out sort of how you're evolving and what's really your passion. And how to stick through entrepreneurship. Of course, passion plays a role. And sort of remembering the big picture. But I think that being sort of agile and flexible, that sometimes your goals can change, your passions can change. Be flexible, be open to the new possibilities that excite you, because sometimes you may start with a business idea that is your passion. You may have to pivot because for some reason, just from a business model standpoint, it might not be the best. And so I would talk about just keeping an open mind, being open to possibilities. Your attitude is a lot. So having a track record of seeing that working hard, once you set a goal, working hard for it has paid off for you in the past. That has been fuel for me. Like, I'll get through this, and I have a goal in mind. And it's what keeps me going during those difficult times as well, while you're running a business.
Yeah, that's great advice, Luvleen. And I love that you reminded us to give ourselves the grace to say, like, it's okay if you don't know what your passion is right now. That's actually really important. We forget that that's also an important part of the journey. Most people think the journey starts at knowing your passion. The journey actually starts before that. So I love that reminder. So thank you for bringing that up. And Joy, I'd love to get your perspective as we talk about passion and entrepreneurship. And this all covers a facet of personal growth and how do we find personal growth today. And what I love about your story and what you've shared with me is you've gone through a lot of change during this time. You've gone through some change personally. You've gone through some change professionally. So you mentioned that you took a COVID leave, which I think is so interesting. So I'd love to understand, how did that help you mentally? How did that help you emotionally, physically? And what did you do to make the most of that time? And where has that taken you now?
Absolutely. So working at Facebook, I feel like they're generally pretty generous with, us taking the leave and PTO and medical that we need. But they introduced a new kind of COVID leave that would enable us to take care of friends, family members, ourselves, etc., as we sort of process change. And, I know that there's like moms on the panel, so there's school schedules and care and a lot to kind of consider no matter, what role you play in your family. I took that leave for a week, and mentally it was a very necessary stop for me. My mind was just absolutely racing, overwhelmed as we tried to transition our projects and figure out, new ways to do virtual events, etc. It was just a lot for me. So I needed that stop. I think emotionally what it enabled me to do, getting out of my routine and my habit, was really feel the fear of the moment. Because for me as a Black woman, I was going through two types of things. There's, okay, disproportionately, we're going to be affected by this health crisis and not necessarily have the medical, attention that we need when we're in those situations. And then also, I'm afraid to step outside. I was taking a walk and I was verbally assaulted in my neighborhood, like after I took my leave, or maybe before. It's hard to tell. The days are blending together, right? But so someone hurling a racial epithet at you and the news going off about people that are, losing their lives during this fight, it's very stressful. And I felt that the most important thing that I could do for myself to work well and make sure that I was being present for my teams and energized in the work that, I have to carry and lead at Instagram was to take a break. Physically, it was also helpful because I went from being a commuter who danced at parties every weekend to not really having a physical outlet and trying to figure out a place for all of that energy. So I was able to set up time with my therapist to think through it. I was able to set up time with a personal trainer and a friend, who motivated me to be healthy. And I think the things that I pulled out of that are just to focus on your body first. What is your body trying to tell you about how you're reacting to this moment, to really sit and honor that. And also to just kind of make boundaries, during that time. You really have to kind of tune others out, tune news out as you need it, and not feel pressure to participate at every level and in every conversation and every statistic. You don't have to be updated every single day. You just need to survive this moment. And so that's something I kept telling myself is don't hold yourself against the standard of how other people are processing during your leave. This is you surviving. This is me playing. I would just lay in the sun. I would dance. I would watch Hamilton, whatever. Just let yourself kind of have that time. And I'm really glad that I did it, because when I came back, I was no longer looking at my projects got to toss myself in front of the camera. I was more let's get this work done. And I know exactly what we need to focus on, to move forward at Facebook. Yeah,
that's so great, Joy. Thank you for sharing those tips. And, there's a theme coming up, right? We've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to give ourselves that grace. And Alaina, I'd actually love to pivot to you next and ask, you're running a company now, and you're running in a company that is trying, in a world where we've got a pandemic, we've got social unrest, who knows what else is, knock on wood. And you're running a team, and would love to get your perspective on how should team members, or how should women today ask for that personal time at work? And how do you have the conversation about preserving your mental health at work? I know that's something that you've had to confront with your own teams, and would love your advice there.
So thanks for asking. And actually, it's really funny hearing Joyce speak, who works at one of the largest corporations, and we're a small business. We don't have a lot of key parts of company in-house. We don't have full-time HR staff. We only have 13 full-time employees. So hearing something like COVID leave as a proper, present this to your team, whereas we were just on a team meeting a couple times now. And that is something that we're doing as a small company, though it wasn't presented probably in as formal of a way, that Joy was, offered it. But that gives me the inspiration to formally present it. So anyway, I want to answer your question. This is hard on everybody. I think that's really important to keep remembering. No one's alone going through this. When I have hard days, I just remind myself everyone in the world is literally going through this right now. And so, back in, I think, April or March, I told my team, I was like, if you need a day, take the day. Tell whoever in management you're comfortable coming to and saying, I can't be on today. I'm having whatever you need. If you needed a week, if you needed a day, if you needed an hour to unplug. Because it's if at the end of the day, if you're not well, you're not going to be able to produce the work anyway. So we need our team feeling right, feeling healthy, feeling well, emotionally, mentally. Who knows what's going on with everyone at home? We have a lot of mom editors on staff, and when schools shut down, again, on that meeting as well, it was take care of your house, take care of your kids, take care of your family. The work will get done. The work is secondary. If we have to drop to 1 story a day right now, we will drop to 1 story a day. Like, we need our people well and right. And I just think, I know I wanted to emphasize that, but then people still, employees sometimes still feel uncomfortable asking. So I like your idea of like literally putting it in writing, because, like you can say it at a meeting, but people might not want to not stand up for themselves, but ask. So I think, thank you. I just got a good idea of like, present them with, this is an official policy. You are allowed to ask for this. And I think that is better for an employee as well, to have that option to come to someone. So yeah, I hope other employers are seeing like they need to take care of their people. I mean, I hope everyone out there who is working for someone knows that it's okay to ask for what you need. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And I think what's beautiful today is, given all the people who are joining us on this conference, hopefully they can hear the story of both you, Elena, as a founder, giving that space to your team members and your employees. And then they'll hear Joy's story about having the courage to also be able to take it, right? Even as it's offered. And so hopefully this will inspire women to either ask for it or even suggest to their employers to offer it, which is great. And so, Elena, you talked about moms and moms having to juggle it all. So I'd actually love to pivot over to Anna, because Anna, you are a chief creative officer, you're a founder, you're a mother, you're a wife, and I'm already tired just listing that off, but that's a lot of hats. And it's a lot of hats in times like today. So how are you managing right now with everything personally? And do you have advice on what's working for you? And also, do you have thoughts on like what's not working and what should we be working on, or what are solutions you wish that were in place?
I mean, it's been like 5 months or so now. I think it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, I think, for everybody. Like I still remember back when we got sent home from school, and like, it was like, oh, it'll be a few weeks. And then it's turned into something totally different. And I think that taking it day by day is definitely challenging. I'm very grateful that I have 3 wild boys and they have each other to play with. I'm in a lot of mom group texts. I think as a working mom, it's always been a little challenging to connect with other moms. And I think that it was really amazing seeing moms in a school really come together, and we've sort of leaned on each other, and I'm really grateful for that. And just, asking for help when you need it, or saying that you need a minute. Nathan and I, work together, and I think that has allowed us to be great partners in life, in business and at home. So, we know when to look at each other and just say, like, I need a minute. Like, I need you to handle this right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like, I don't know, it could be like 5 minutes by yourself, or go for a drive, or whatever you can do. And on the other hand, making sure that the boys aren't too impacted by what's going on either, because they're 5 and under. So for them, it's like, they have no idea, which I love, other than, my son thought everyone was like a bandit with masks on, and thought everyone was like going to rob a bank the first time that he saw all these people outside with masks. So it was very confusing. But they're used to it now, which, is just sort of, rolling with things, trying to talk to them about it in a way that's appropriate, and just figuring things out. And even though it can be stressful, really leaning into the time that we have together, being able to see them more. I've been really grateful for that, and having more flexibility in general. Just kind of working that into the day-to-day. I think offices are sort of learning how to do the remote thing, and I think that is good in some ways, because it definitely has some sort of flexibility built into it, because that everyone's at home and everyone's dealing with different things.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Real quick for Anna and Elena, given that you guys are both mothers and founders and trying to run a business, is there anything that either of you are letting go of real quick that you're saying, you know what, I'm going to let go of this and it's totally fine? I'm sure women would love to hear that.
Well, I struggle with delegation all the time. So I think it's definitely forced me to become better at that, which is something I'm constantly trying to work on. And I think, you just can't do everything all the time. And I think that I have an amazing team, and they've rallied together through this, and we've all come together as a team to get through the challenges of the industry. And so I think that we've all just had to lean on each other a lot more and ask for help more, which I think is really positive.
Yeah. Real quick, Elena, anything you've let go of?
Yeah, I mean, this might sound silly, but like, I really don't care as much about the physical, me. If I have alone time, it's like bath, reading, trying to relax. But it's been too long since I've worked out. When I put on eyeliner for this, I was like, do I remember how to do this? So, there's time that goes into getting ready and doing your hair and getting dressed like that. And it's just something that hasn't been as big of a priority in my house lately. And we're all fine as a result. And I'm fine as a result. So when I have any time to myself, it's like, get to a Zen place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to hear from Luvleen next on this. And Luvleen, I know that you believe so much in the importance of rituals, and rituals are so important to keep yourself centered and grounded, to not only achieve professional success, but also to achieve personal success. So can you talk to us about why rituals are important and how they can help drive you towards your goals or help get you out of a rut, given that we're all kind of facing some form of thriving and surviving today?
Yeah. No, I think they become maybe all the more important in the era that we're living through. Our basic routine has been sort of turned upside down. And I think it's so important to create structure in your day, especially if you want to achieve something or be productive. You got to set the momentum in the morning. And so I'm not saying that I do this 100% of the time and I'm perfect. It was actually during COVID when I realized that I'm very burnt out, and I'm going to sleep later. I'm waking up later, and then I'm rushing straight to my computer. And I was like, something doesn't feel good and something feels very imbalanced. And so I went back to the basics. And for the basics for me has always been the importance of a morning ritual and a night ritual. And it sort of just gets your day kickstarted and puts you in the right frame of mind. I think it's less about what you do. I think you should identify for yourself what feels good in the morning and what feels good in the evening. And it's more about having something. And so for me in the morning, I wake up and I've been doing this chanting for over 6 years now. It's just my way of meditating. It's my way of connecting with my heart, being honest with what I'm feeling, getting clarity on my goals and what's really important to me, and then getting into the mindset of, I call my name, like I call myself rock star. It's like whatever is your highest self. And it's like, I can do this. I can do this. Or even if I don't know the how, it'll evolve to me. It will unfold to me. And so chanting is a very important part of my day and setting the tone of my day. And then I love lemon water. I love, a smoothie, just small things like that to just feel energized in the morning. And then at night, I don't do it every night, but 2 to 3 times a week, I try to take a bath. I have chronic sort of hip pain as well. And it just relaxes me, relaxes my muscles, it relaxes any chronic pain that I have, and sets the tone for bed. So I would highly recommend it. It's about structure. It's about getting momentum and discipline for your day.
Yeah.
Luvleen, I just wanted to jump in. I feel that in my spirit. Like literally everything that you said about the smells, the bath, the moments, especially waking up and going to sleep. It's that like reset period that's needed in COVID. Like I feel like I got it during my leave and have continued to try to implement it. Like you said, it's not going to be perfect. You may not do the same exact things, but just having those moments where you're like, okay, before bed, I'm going to, for me, it's like a lavender spray, right? I have a whole shelf of oils and it's just what I want to feel tonight. Regardless of what other scents I add, there will always be lavender spray that I like just deeply inhale before I get started. So that's like my must. And then meditating with Headspace is the app that I use to kind of go to sleep. in the mornings, and this is, I would say, like 6 out of 7 mornings, it's going to be a combo of like a face mask or other like face beauty product for me, just to feel like I'm treating myself and it's like a spa-like environment. Yeah. And then I dance to music every single morning in the shower while brushing teeth, make it a whole like, 90s music sort of like interlude thing. But I have to get going that way. And it makes going to your desk, which is often just a couple feet from your bed, so much more fun when you can look forward to something, especially if you're a commuter and you're no longer on the train with your podcast or your paper, or your book, or whatever it used to be. You have to like supplement something else.
I love that. And if I could just say something off, I love how Joy dances. I don't know if anyone's a Tony Robbins fan. I pick and choose things that I like about a lot of different mentors that I go to. And he always says state, story, strategy. Most people, when they're trying to achieve something or a goal, they go straight to the strategy. How do I do that? But the most important thing is your state. And dancing in the morning, it elevates your life state. And when you're in elevated life state, your story becomes more empowering. What are you telling yourself? Do you believe you can do something? Is there a hope-filled sort of language that you're using? And when you have a strong elevated state and you're telling an empowering story, the strategy, again, unfold itself. You don't need to know today what is the strategy, what is the how, because I think that's a lot of the times where people get stuck. Yeah. Elevate your state, tell an empowering story, whether it's meditation or chanting or whatever it is for you, and then things start unfolding.
Yeah, that's awesome, Luvleen. I think so much of what both you and Joy are saying are resonating with me so much right now. And as I think about, especially like, what are the stories we tell ourselves in our head? Are we elevating our state? Are we ready to receive all the good things that we want to do? And I know that at least one of the ahas I've had is, once we moved into this weird era of social injustice and a weird era of pandemic, a lot of us found ourselves in an area of just survival. And so, one of the key questions that at least I know I've asked myself in terms of my own personal life is, instead of just trying to cope, and instead of just creating coping strategies, what can I create? What can I create in terms of new norms or new rituals to help myself, not necessarily thrive, but like help myself feel a sense of normal in a pandemic world? So instead of having the pandemic set its norms on myself and just say, oh, this all sucks, how can I adopt a mindset where I'm saying, you know what? I'm living in a pandemic. I'm living in social unrest, and these are the rituals I'm going to create to show up today and tomorrow and the day after that. So I love everything that you guys are saying, and it's so inspiring. It's getting me excited, which is great. So hopefully all of you guys watching online are loving these tips. So I'd love to pivot a little bit, going back to the idea of, gosh, what do we do today? Finances are a big piece of it. And so Luvleen, I'd actually love to go back to you. And I know that there are a lot of questions, and we've had a lot of questions around how do we handle personal finances right now, especially during this time, and in the areas of, how should women think about what wealth means today? And given that, how should they be investing their dollars today, either personally or for a business they want to start? Would love any insight you have in that area for our viewers.
Sure. I mean, I'd go back to the fundamentals first. Firstly, I think that building confidence with regards to financial management and building a foundation for yourself financially, you need to feel confident. So I'd say number one is, can you educate yourself? There's so many blogs out there. There's so many books out there. For BankMobile, we have a site called Paradigm Money that talks a lot about financial management and interesting financial stories. So it's more tangible, sort of the financial education portion of it as it relates to the story. But setting that foundation, I think, is number one: reading, learning, gaining that confidence. Two, I would talk, I think it's very important to save and start automating your savings. There's so many apps out there now that help you pay yourself. So as soon as your paycheck comes in, how much of it do you want to put aside? And the rule of thumb is typically you want to have, an emergency fund that's about 6 to 8 months of expenses built in there to really protect yourself. Third is, planning for retirement. So make sure your 401k, if it's at work, or your IRA, where you're investing those dollars now. So you're investing in yourself, and you're thinking about retirement. And the last is, just investing your money. So I think right now in the pandemic, I think liquidity is important as well, to make sure that if, to hedge yourself if some downturn exists, etc., make sure that you have access to liquid funds. But think about what investments can you make. The market obviously took a hit over the last 6 to 9 months. And with the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of volatility. But as we see sort of more positive news coming out of the pandemic, when vaccines are starting to come, treatment talk is starting to happen, invest those liquid assets again, whether it's stocks, bonds, real estate, and create those sort of diversified portfolios. So I would stick to those basics, to be honest.
Yeah, those are great basics. And obviously your app, Luvleen, has been so great in making digital banking more accessible for not just women, but people across the country, which is fantastic. So thank you for sharing those tidbits of advice. I especially love what you said about making sure your assets are liquid, that you've got cash on hand that you can access quickly, especially in a time like this. And so kind of bridging back to what we talked about earlier about turning your passion into a business, funding is a part of that. And obviously, Anna, you were able to grow your business organically. And I think in conversations that you and I have had, you started your business in the middle of the recession, in the last great recession. And you have not taken any funding since then. You grew it all organically. So I'm sure people here would love to hear the tips that you have of like, how did you handle personal finances? How did you budget to grow your business? And I'm sure any of your insights there would be really well appreciated by everyone watching today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I usually say is we didn't have a job to quit. We were sort of really started at the bottom. We were 24. Nathan was playing in a band, touring around in a van. I was freelance illustrating. We really were scraping by anyway. I think and we sort of had this wonderful naivety about the whole thing because we didn't have anything to give up. And I often think it's a lot harder when you have a very comfortable job and you want to start something new, that taking that risk is a lot more difficult when you sort of have no place to fall from, like we did. But, we had nothing, so it didn't even probably occur to us to get funding because I don't even know if we knew where to start with that. It was just sort of like, we can spend what we have. And so I started doing custom wedding invitations, and that money funded our first round of products and our website. And we rented a really small office by the time that we launched. So that was really it. And then, we started making sales and then using that money to reinvest in the business. A few months later, we hired our first employee, but probably didn't pay ourselves for the first 2 or 3 years. Wow. So really, we're just putting everything we had into the business and really just having fun doing it. Cause like that time of life, it made sense, we had everything to give at that time. So sort of grateful that we were able to do that. And, if I were to think about starting something new now, I don't know if I would have the same sort of young drive that we did then, but it really worked to our advantage. And I think starting in a recession, just like businesses that are going to start now, it's a really creative time. Even though it's really challenging, it's an opportunity to start something new and get creative and dream up new ideas. And I think there's so many great businesses that came out of that 2009, 2010 period that are successful now because they learned how to grow in a time that was challenging. And so it makes when times are working, you're that much stronger.
Yeah. That's great advice, Anna, and love that story. And thank you so much for sharing so open and honestly about the experience that you went through, especially since you grew a business or started a business during a recession. Elena, quickly, do you have anything to add to that? Because obviously you started with $6,000.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Danielle and I, that's us both contributing. That was all my money and then some. Like that was $3,000 is what we both contributed. And that was just to pay the web developers to build the site that Danielle and I had designed in Photoshop by ourselves. And it was not a good user experience. It looked pretty, but it was not super functional. But yeah, no, we're in the same boat. We've never taken on funding. And, you know, we launched in 2012, so we're in our 8th year. And for a long time, it was the two of us. And same as Anna said, you don't pay yourself for a while, typically when you're starting. And we have just been a slow and steady growth strategy. Like I said, we both like what we're doing. Neither of us had clear vision on how the industry barely even existed then. The whole brands didn't even know how to partner with bloggers and websites like that. It was like, we know we're supposed to be partnering with you, but we don't know how. And so like we and our partners were like learning together of like, okay, what's a rate? How do we measure deliverables? But again, like Anna said, you just it's slow and steady growth. And then once you see money coming in, it's okay, how do we invest that back into the company? What's another option for us to grow? Is it hiring an employee? I remember we we were so scared to bring on our first employee, and we were like, with our accountant, we were like, how much can we pay them? We've always been very, very conservative with all of our expenses, even our office situation. Just knowing that, you know, things like, well, we did not know that something like this was going to happen, but like, you just never know what could happen. And so I think keeping your ear to the ground, being conservative, but like when you see traction starting, you know, it's the companies that then see really, really fast growth that I think that, which I can't speak to, but I know that's a whole other ballgame. It's like when you're growing too fast and trying to keep up with that. But no, it's good. Just if you feel good about what you're doing, like you can tell by the response you get. I think Anna can speak to that as well. And Luvleen, like you see whether it's resonating or not, whether there's a hole in the market, and you just kind of have to trust that and go slow. It doesn't have to be overnight success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, ladies. I think we got a lot of great tidbits on both personal finance and how to set up your finances to turn your passion into a business. And I want to talk now a bit more about personal development, and more so around the area of like, how do you support yourself with the right community at this time? And how do we show up as great community members, females supporting females or males supporting females, vice versa, so on and so forth. So Joy, would actually love to get your take, especially with everything that's going on. And I know you and I talked about this earlier, so thank you for the permission to go there, and thank you in advance for sharing your wisdom. Yeah. But, you know, what advice would you offer women today on how we can show up and how we can support our Black female friends, either in the workplace, in personal life? I know it's a really challenging subject, but again, appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us today and how we can build a stronger community there.
Yeah, I love to talk about this. Being Black for me, it's something that I talked about this at the last Everygirl conference. I wear it, right, every single day. So there is no tiptoeing, you know, we have to be able to like name it, claim it, and talk about our experiences. That's at least how I approach it. Yeah. I think for me, like the most helpful thing that my female colleagues especially can do is to recognize that like my experience as a Black woman is different than your experience as a woman. You know, I think that there are some times where folks will try to empathize with you, like, oh, I get, and it's like, you know, misogynoir and other things that we face, like it's a very unique, right, kind of hatred that we're dealing with as Black women that other women can't necessarily, you know, empathize with, though they can sometimes sympathize. So I think part of coming into our world a little bit is about educating yourself. I think that around March and through April too, there were a lot of like, you know, can't believe this is happening. I'm so shocked. I'm so sorry. You know, it's seeing things in the news. That in itself can be triggering and very difficult because it's like, I live with this, you know, and we've been sort of like shaking the table for a while. And systemic inequality and racism in the United States in particular is so old. It's in our very foundation, right? It's in the nation's core. So to recognize that this is a long series of events, patterns, trends and beliefs that are now in America's, subconscious, and then of course overt racism, but like they're coming out in the form of microaggressions and macroaggressions, right? So just knowing like the difference between those, how to identify them, going beyond the just like, when you get called, blank word, like I need other women to understand kind of like what I'm going through and be able to be an ally for me in that way and call that out when that happens in the workplace. I think also adding your voice, so not letting the Black women in your workplace like be alone when they're calling out specific things and being like, that's a Black issue, and feeling like, oh, because I'm a white woman or because I'm an Asian woman, I can't step in. It's like, yes, you can, and yes, you should, right? It should be everyone's problem to address this. One thing we say at Facebook is nothing at Facebook is anyone else's problem. Like we all have to step in and kind of address the inequalities that we see. Not to tokenize Black women. So just because I'm here and happy to talk about it doesn't mean that I am the representative for an entire race, that there are so many experiences across the African diaspora. So just having one person and asking one person for their feedback really isn't going to cut it. But to try to diversify your community, if you spend your community only in like your whole day in people only that look like you, and you're not exposed to Black women, like I think that that's an issue, especially given how much we're like driving culture and driving business today. And then finally, just like recruit and mentor. There are small actions we can take. If you feel like, I'm not an expert on race relations, I don't have the time to get into the documentaries and the books and which, is a human reaction. We all have our own worlds. There are tiny, tiny, tiny things that you can do, like in hiring processes. If, you're an entrepreneur and you're like in that sort of capacity, or even just at a larger corporation, supporting other Black people and Black women, especially coming in, advocating for equal pay, and then mentoring, just reach out and say like, I noticed you've been at the company for a while. Notice you just got here. I would love to reach over and be someone in your corner, and, not expecting them to fully educate you on the Black experience. But again, just like taking those steps and doing the little things that you can. That's what would support me as a Black woman in the workplace. And I think a lot of us today.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And thank you again, Joy, and very sensitive to the fact that we also should not just rely on our Black friends to educate us on the topics. We need to do the work ourselves, because that is also another mental and emotional burden that the Black community may not want to carry right now, which is fully understandable. So thank you for sharing those tidbits of advice. And I'm hoping you'll let us go there, Joy.
Let's do it.
I
know what you're going to ask.
The pandemic has brought on a lot of interesting situations, our own personal growth, right? So we talked a lot today about personal growth, passion, passion projects, how we're thriving or coping. But one of the things I'd love to talk about, and I know, congratulations, by the way, I know you're about to be pursuing another degree, which is fantastic in the area of personal growth. But I'd love to talk about dating, because I think, again, one of the questions we get is, how am I supposed to meet people right now? And community is so important with personal growth. So if you would just entertain us a little bit with what dating is like
yes,
during the pandemic, that would be really fun, Joy.
Let me take you into my world, because
I go for that. Hold on. Okay, let's go.
Yes, get the Marca. I, like many other women, like my situation kind of changed once I got into the pandemic. My partner and I just had not only like physical time apart due to the distance and not being able to travel and see each other, but also just talking through some of the things that are like happening in the world. We realized through these in-depth conversations and with the distance and space that we needed to think, about our relationship and future very uniquely, that though it had been 7 years in the making to that point, that just suddenly, we realized we had grown differently, right? So the perspectives that we had weren't going to be conducive to a relationship. Someone called it conscious uncoupling. And I was like, yeah, that's very much what happened. Yeah, we consciously uncoupled. So it was definitely a painful moment, right? That was my best friend. And so I think when you go through something like that in a pandemic, because it can be so isolating, it's important to do a couple of things. One is like surrounding myself, right, with love. Like there was still very much like love in the relationship that I left behind, and also surrounding myself with friends and family and just making my experience very transparent, even my coworkers, because we have that culture. So all these like powerful women kind of rallied around me. I kicked men off of my close friends because I just wanted my girls to like vent with, and that was helpful. And then the next thing is like appropriately taking the time to grieve, the relationship, and just think about it and feel, again, just like the COVID leave, like feeling the sadness of the moment is important. Yeah. But after all that, like recognizing that like you still got it, girl. Like I realized that the things that I want for me, even as I like build my career, the things I want personally are like companionship. I want to build a relationship with a like-minded person. So how was I going to do this during the pandemic? I had to go to the apps. The apps are a horrifying, just a pit of death, but they can also be kind of like exciting. So my strategy was, let me hop up in here and like let all these boys know up front what I'm looking for, and just kind of like the context of my situation. And I jumped out, I grabbed cute pictures, solicited feedback, threw them up there on a couple different apps. I don't know, am I allowed to drop the apps by name?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Okay. There were a couple like, Bumble and Hinge that are like very fun. And then some that are more serious, like The League. So I started with the fun ones to just kind of like get my toes wet. And then The League is something that allows you to add like your profession, your education. So I've been able to meet like-minded people, of course, using distance, FaceTiming them before you meet them in person to get the vibe check. Like I've definitely had a strategy, and, to be at a place where you are at a sort of blank slate for the first time in 7 years for me was like, okay, anything that I could potentially dream up, to meet in a person or to find in a relationship, I can do that now. So a combination of that and Instagram vision boarding, by going through my Explore and saving pictures of cute couples has definitely lifted my spirits during the pandemic, and we'll see where it goes as I start school.
I love that, Joy. And thank you.
Vision board.
Yeah, I know. I love that. She was like, there's a vision board of cute couples. I'm like, that's so good. It's so cute. So, Joy, thank you for letting us go there and sharing that, because I know that that's a question that a lot of people are like, should I not? And there's no like playbook. Well, there's no playbook for any of this, but that's so fun that you're sharing that. So thank you again. So ladies, I'd like to get to our last question before we jump into Q&A and we've been getting a lot of Q&A, by the way, from people watching. So here's my last question for you all. And so I'd love you all to answer this quickly if you can. One of the sayings that at least has really resonated with me, and I think is really telling of the times that we're in right now, is they say, don't count the days, but make the day count. Don't count the days, but make the day count. So as you think about this statement, I would love to know for all of you very quickly, what's the one thing that you guys are doing to make the day count today? So, Elena, I'm going to start with you.
Oh no, I was just thinking that's a sentence I like need to hear and ingrain.
Okay, well, let me say it again, and then I'll Luvleen, are you okay if I go to you first?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll say it one more time. Don't count the days, make the day count. So what's the one thing you guys are all doing to make the day count today? So Luvleen.
Well, it's actually been throughout the pandemic. I've realized it's become more apparent to me. I live in New York, and it's not the most nature-filled area. And I moved to Pennsylvania for the last 5 months, and nature fills me up. Nice. So the thing that I do every day through this pandemic is I go for like a 45 minute walk, and I've spent time with family as well, so going with them, and it just fills me up. So my relationships and filling myself up with nature makes the day count for me.
I love that. Awesome. Thanks, Joy. I can certainly relate. Thanks, Luvleen. I can certainly relate. Joy, I'm going to go to you next. What's the one thing you're going to do to make the day count today?
I reach out to one person that's on my mind every day.
Oh, I like that. That's an easy one too. I like it. Anna, what's the one thing you do to make the day count?
I think through all of this, just sort of realizing that life is short and that every day counts. And I think one thing that's special at night with my oldest, when we put him to bed, we talk about what we're thankful for and what we can do better the next day, and just sort of talk about the day and the questions we have. And I think that's helped just put things in perspective, but also just making sure that every day we're being grateful. And even though it's tough, there's people that have it much worse, and it's not too difficult to stay in our houses really at the end of the day. So just trying to be grateful for everything that we have and have that mindset at the end of the day has helped me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Elena, let's
Back
wrap
to me.
it up before we go to Q&A.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what everyone said. I feel like in some ways, getting outside more, cherishing the minutes you have with your loved ones. Because I know everyone has the moments like where literally both kids are screaming at my house. And I'm like, but then I just start laughing. And it's like, because it's so ridiculous. There's just like crying coming at you from every direction. But my husband and I keep saying like, we are my husband was furloughed for a few months back in April, May. And he was able to watch the kids during that time when we didn't have childcare. And our boys are 2 and 8 months at the time. And it was like, we're so grateful for this moment with them. Like, and it was, not to say, it was very stressful, especially with running a company. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And with his job and, we didn't know what was going to happen, but having all that time together, we were in a very lucky position in that way. So I think to sum it up, it's really being grateful for this time with anyone. And I think when everyone was staying at home and not seeing anybody at all ever, and I know we're still staying at home, but you know what I mean? When it was like lockdown, even seeing my mom from 6 feet away and like having a glass of wine is like, I'm so grateful for this moment. Like you never take for granted an invite out again back when things go back to being allowed to like see people. So
I love that.
that's my answer.
Yeah, we absolutely can't take these moments for granted right now. So that's awesome. That's a beautiful end to this part of the group panel discussion. I'd love to move into Q&A because like I said, we have a lot of Q&A questions. And so I'd actually like to start with Anna. This first question coming in is, would you consider yourself to be more creative-minded, business-minded, or both when you were starting Rifle Paper Company? What advice would you give women who are more creative-minded wanting to start their own business?
I like to think both. I think that being an entrepreneur, I think you have to at least have some sort of appreciation for the business side and some passion for it, because I think that it is so much a part of growing a business. And I think that side fascinates me. I love being in meetings, hearing about what people are responding to and like marketing meetings and really thinking about the business as a whole, because I think that makes me be a better creative person and having all of that information at my disposal. At the same time, Nathan's my partner and he kind of has both too, actually. Like, even though he plays more on the business side, I can ask him advice on a new design and I value his perspective there. So I think they go hand in hand. There's periods of what I do that feels very creative, and then there's weeks where I feel like I'm in a lot of meetings and it's a lot of the business side. So I think having a passion for that is important, because I'm involved with a lot of it, but it's fun.
Yeah. And then quick follow-up question for you, Anna, that's coming in is, what are you doing to stay inspired? Since you are working in a creative industry in very odd times, like what's the one thing you're doing to stay inspired right now?
It's been tough, honestly. There's been many times the last few months where I have not felt inspired. And I think first thing was realizing that's okay, and that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And especially March, April is just so hard, so many unknowns, so many things to figure out with the business that creating something just felt like the last thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think in those times, just sort of taking a step away, maybe it's doing something that's not on the work to-do list, like creating something totally unrelated. I don't know, getting a coloring book, or just doing something different that makes it not work sometimes can help get you out of the rut.
Yeah.
Or watching something inspiring. I always find documentaries about other people's lives very inspiring and can help sort of reinvigorate you. So usually it's taking a step back and doing something other than the thing you're supposed to be doing to help get back into it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The next Q&A that we have coming in is for Elena. And I think we talked about this a little bit, but probably in more detail. You know, women are told they can have it all, right? They can have a business, family, a great relationship, social life, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel the pressure of this now more so than ever? And what advice do you have to balance it?
I mean, gosh, I feel like that phrase is so, like, it sets this bar so unrealistically high that it's like instant anxiety for me, or for, I think, probably a lot of people. I know I personally, and you know, people who follow me personally on Instagram, you're seeing essentially 1 minute of an entire day, you know, and you think it's that person's whole life. So first of all, that's not the case. I don't have it all at all. I think if I had to prioritize anything, it's been my family, meaning my husband and my 2 sons, and my job. Those are like right now above and beyond everything, before any kind of fitness routine, before our home, before getting to see family or friends ever. Like, those are my 2 main priorities. I think choosing that 1, 2, maybe even 3 things that, like, you really can, to use who was that? Luvleen said, that fill you up and that you can give your all to. I think that's really what matters. If something is bringing you a lot of stress, like if work is, that you can rely on that other thing that you're kind of also giving it all to. If you're just giving your all to one thing, like, if that starts going south, you need something else that's going to fill you back up. So don't think having it all is some end goal. It's impossible. No one has it all. I think having a little bit of more things is great. And otherwise, just give your all to 1 or 2 or 3 things, maybe. You know, don't think you have to do it all, because it's impossible and it's just not worth the mental exhaustion.
That's great advice, Elena. Thank you for answering that question for our attendees. This next Q&A question's coming in for Luvleen. And Luvleen, obviously you talked a lot to us about personal finances. You talked to us about entrepreneurship and rituals. This is actually more of a professional question, which is fine because we're going to bridge into that panel later on. But obviously banking and finance is a notoriously male-dominated industry, and some women might be feeling that more, especially in a work-from-home environment. What advice would you give women working in a male-dominated field or company during these times while we're working from home?
That's interesting. You know, again, you know, about the story, I talked about, you know, an empowering story as well. I think that I've always tried to use it to my advantage. You know, I'm usually the youngest in the room. I'm usually the only woman in the room, and you can set yourself apart, you know, in that way as well. And so, what is the gift in sort of being different? And I think that even our business model is quite disruptive in nature, and what we've done in the banking finance world. And, you know, I think that it's helpful to just, you know, own who you are and always do your best. Like, you know, earn people's respect. Like, what are the things that you value and what earns respect in your eyes? And I think that being, you know, well versed in the business that I'm in, you know, having a strong vision of where we're going, speaking with calmness no matter sort of what happens, like, you know, that earns respect. You know, I struggle with this question a lot because I view it like, let's try to take it as much of an advantage as possible, and 2, just do your freaking best and stand out and shine, and you earn people's respect over time, and you stand your ground and, you know, create, you know, a name for yourself.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And Luvleen, I can't speak enough. I know the whole panel is very proud of you, especially with how far you've come within finance and some of your recent news as well with the extended merger and acquisition. So we are all very proud of you, and I know that your wisdom means so much to so many people here. So I would be remiss to not call that out on the panel. So last question and last Q&A goes to you, Miss Joy. And so what advice do you have for Black women or Black women or persons of color wanting to get into brand marketing?
Yeah, I think that when Black or underrepresented people are looking at the industry, it's very similar to Luvleen. Like, just come in and be undeniable, right? And do your best. When you're doing excellent work, right, you have something to stand on. I would say definitely building a portfolio. So it's not necessarily unique to us because we have our own little tips and tricks and secrets and organizations and things like that, like Ad Color that you can look to for Black and underrepresented marketers. But I would say just build that portfolio, like have a record of your work, campaigns that you've worked on, and programs that you've led, and be able to jump in anywhere. I think that in this sort of climate and context, companies are unsure about how they want to apply marketing budget. They're unsure about, the media landscape. Billboards maybe aren't as attractive right now. So thinking about how do we take moments, cultural moments that we used to celebrate in person together in the hundreds and the thousands, transition those online? How do we reach young people whose lives have been like altered by not being able to be present with each other in school? Like, there are just so many industries that are impacted by these recent changes. And so as underrepresented marketers, where we want to jump in and really like have a say and make an impact is figuring out this kind of like unique solution. So that's what I would recommend tackling right now to like position and kind of offer value.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Well, Joy, I couldn't have asked for a better closing quote for our personal fulfillment panel. So ladies, I know that we all have some Marca Prosecco bias, and I just want to cheers to you all and really say, first of all, thank you for sharing all your wisdom. Cheers. We'll do a quick cheers. This is sort of like doing a boomerang. A quick cheers. And I want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your wisdom, sharing your advice. And my gosh, here's to being undeniable as women chasing our personal lives, right? So, all right, cheers once again.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was amazing. I loved even hearing from all of you. So thank you for the pivot to online. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And so from here, we are going to close out our personal fulfillment panel. And please stay tuned because later we are going to have some more interviews with more fantastic women on our professional panel.